Hello and welcome to episode 332 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark. I'm the Green Tank. I'm joined by Kellen the Red Tank.
Hello.
And Neelan the Orange Tank.
Hello.
Is this a new Mark
and today,
that we're hearing?
Yeah,
what?
This is. I love this new affectation you're putting on. Yeah.
Every time I host, I try to give it a little bit of spice. Am I going to be the quiet, contemplating Mark? Am I going to be the energetic Mark? Am I going to be the crazy, loopy Mark? So today I'm like the slick, slippery, what is he doing, Mark?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to go for. Yeah, that's my persona today. Actually, today I'm the mean Mark because today we are going to be talking. Look at that. That's a segue. We are inspired by Reddit user 30 is the new 40. And I just want to thank that user for having like a real username and not some string of digits or having to make me curse or say something profane, which I would never do. But inspired by their post, we are going to be talking about hard passes. They specifically say on their post which board games you actively avoid and why. They go on to expand on that and ask what games specifically people would politely decline when playing games. We're going to be talking about that ourselves, like which games when they come out at a game night or when they're proposed for a game night, we'll be like, not really feeling that one.
Not really. It's hard pass, Mark. Hard pass.
I know, but when you're with your friends at a game night, you're not going to say hard pass.
You're going to
say, an interesting take on mean Mark.
Yeah. Do you have friends, bro?
I do, and that's because I don't let mean Mark get to super meanness.
You don't yuck anyone's yum.
That's right. I never want to yuck a yum. Mean Mark, when something is proposed that he doesn't like, he doesn't go hard pass, get out of here. He goes, I want that one.
You just quietly disappear out of the room. Like slowly back away.
I need to make some sliders. And I go.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that later. But before we do, we'll be talking about some of the games we've played, as is our wont. Kellen will be talking about TRICKTAKERs. I will follow it up with Iquazú. And finally, Neelan will be talking about another game with a weird title, as he is wont to do. Hubworld, Aidalon? Is that what I've written down here?
Yeah, Aidalon, who can say
Aidalon, okay. Yeah, see, all these games that you play have weird... I guess mine is called Iquazú, so I don't have much room to talk. But yours seem to be very colon heavy. So anyhow, that's in the far future. Right now, Kellen, talk to us about TRICKTAKERs.
All right, so TRICKTAKERs is actually spelled in perhaps the most obnoxious way I've ever seen a board game spelled, where TRICKTAKER is in all caps, and then the S is in lowercase. Obviously, that makes sense if you think about it thematically.
What is that symbolizing? What are they trying to say?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What is the purpose of that?
Who could say? It's to be edgy and differentiated. Do you feel like it's different?
I feel like it's edgy.
It's something. This is at least the appearance of a trick-taking game, which I think hopefully is self-evident from the title. TRICKTAKERs. I don't know. How do you say it when it's all caps with lower,
TRICKTAKERs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think Mark's got it, actually. So I think the funny thing about this game is that it presents as a trick taker, but in many ways it's sort of like either barely a trick taker or more of a character selection game. So it's sort of like a regular old trick taker, must follow, except everyone gets all of their cards and then drafts heroes for the game. For that round specifically, that dramatically alter the rules. And in order to win a game of TRICKTAKERs, you are trying to sort of go through a variety of win conditions. If you win a hand of TRICKTAKERs, you get 1 gold crown. And if you get 2 gold crowns, you win. And that's the best win condition, let's call it. You can also win by getting 3 black crowns, which would be getting no tricks 3 rounds in a row. Or if you fulfill the character's win condition that you have gotten, you win the game immediately. And then if none of that happens, which may happen after 3 rounds of the game, whoever has the highest victory points wins the game. So there's sort of like 4 win conditions all happening at once, but the things that are happening are really insane. Like one character is the gambler, and they are bidding on how many tricks they think they will win. And if they bid 4 tricks and they get 4 out of 5 tricks, they actually win the entire game. The game is over. If they win all the tricks in a hand, the game is over. And betting allows them to win more victory points, which again is the worst victory condition, but still one of the victory conditions. There is another character called the Berserker, where if you don't like your hand, you just discard all the cards in your hand. You get a special Berserker card that's super powerful, and then you draw cards from an exclusive Berserker deck, which are also super powerful. But the Berserker, if they only win one trick, loses points for that hand. And then if they win all 5 tricks, they also lose points for that hand. So they're sort of getting all the good cards, but you can't win all of the tricks. And in fact, their special win condition is only applicable in the 3rd round, in which case they win the game if they win 0 tricks in the final round. I'm not going to go through every power because it's sort of wild. There's an adventurer, has his own deck of items. There are like characters that are not always in the game, right? You sort of sub them out. There's a hermit who is drawing new cards each turn, and then also some of their cards are better. Their flag cards are normally defeat cards, but their flag cards are instant win cards. Mark, you have played this. Neil, and I know you have played this. I've played this a couple of times. I would say that I have... It is so specific because you could not play this with casual trick-taking fans. And then when you get to the hardcore trick-taking people, they're like, the hell have you done to my trick-taking game? This is like barely a trick-taking game. Yeah. And yet the sort of king-making negotiations of you can't do that because that's going to allow the Berserker to win, and we've got to help the Hermit do this before it stops the other person, combined with pretty charming anime-esque anthropomorphic? Is that the code word that brings them all, brings all the root boys to the yard? I don't know where I'm at with this, to be honest with you. Normally I come in pretty hot, like, yes, I love this, or no, I don't. I'm very excited to own it, and I'm excited to play it more, but I'm just really not sure. Curious how you guys have taken it the first few times you've tried this one.
So I've only played it the one time, and it was a translation from a Japanese copy. So just the teach didn't feel like it went especially smoothly. I think we got there by the end, but just a little sort of stuttering in that respect. And we didn't have any of the negotiation that you're sort of referring to in maybe some of your games. So I wonder if that would have added something to it. But I feel like in the end, I'm very much like where you are. I remember thinking that, I think we played with like the basic heroes, and there are like a bunch that come in the main pack. And I also got it in a trade that included a bunch of expansion characters. So it just seemed like so many possibilities as to which ones you could play with. So I think we just played with the base ones. But yeah, I remember thinking it was interesting, and that it didn't really feel like a trick taker that I'd played, but maybe so far away from that it didn't really feel like a trick taker, even though the name is Trick Takers. I think some people have said, if memory serves, that like it feels like the draft is like where the game's at. Drafting your hero or your character is like where the crux of or the meat of the game is, and I can see where that comes from. So yeah, I remember just feeling unsure of what I felt about it after playing it, but chalking that mostly up to not being familiar with it, and again, not clear rules explanation. So yeah, it's interesting that you came away feeling the same thing after a couple games.
I wonder if I'm not in like the perfect middle ground for this, which is to say that I'm not even nearly close to like a trick taker purist. Like, it's not my go-to genre at all, but I've now played enough of them that I can kind of see, oh, that's really interesting because of da-da-da-da-da. I'm not going to lose any points to trick takers because it doesn't really feel like a trick taker. In fact, I would describe it like mostly, and I remember thinking this at the time, it's almost like a multiplayer trick-taking puzzle to some extent, which is like you look at your hand, you draft a character, and then it's how do I specifically win using this hand and this combination of characters as quickly or as optimally as possible, because every character has a way to like immediately win like halfway through a hand, otherwise you're just accumulating points at the end. So there's this interesting thing you're navigating, which is like, how do I use my hand to win with this character? How do I do that against the other characters that have been drafted? And how do I time everything out just like so pounce and then, you know, win at the opportune time? I found thinking about that a really interesting little puzzle at all times. But I do think that the trade-off for that is it doesn't really feel like a trick taker. It's very weird. You kind of have to know enough about trick taking to even like engage with it at all. It is really like such a niche of a niche sort of game. It's weird.
Yeah. I am happy that this exists, and I think this designer, Hirokin, who I hopefully have said that right, is also the designer of Eternal Decks, another new popular card game. And so there's definitely some special sauce magic going on here. with them as a designer, but it is unclear who this would be for. But like for me, it works well enough that I'm excited to get it out again with advanced trick-taking players and just see how it goes. I could see a group getting really into it almost as like a mini lifestyle-y sort of thing, because once you know all the characters and what their special win condition is, like you're just going to get through it fast and going to be sort of like pointing out, oh no, we're about to lose to this, like, oh, this is what could happen, and like that becomes the fun of it. I don't know. In some ways, I like thinking about it maybe more than I enjoyed playing it. And that's not that big of a knock. Like, I've held on to it, and I am like in the like coalest of the coal, getting rid of every board game that you could see from eye to eye, and TRICKTAKERs is still around despite its obnoxious name. Yeah, that's one. If that sounds interesting to you, if you've played a lot of trick-taking games and you're looking for something different with a common vernacular, I think you could do a lot worse. This is certainly very, very interesting, and so give it a look out. I think Portland Game Collective either is doing the expansion, which Mark, you sounds like you may already have. I don't know exactly how it works. There's a lot of games in this series because they have another.
I have like TRICKTAKERs Little as well, whatever the hell that is. I don't know.
I don't know what that is. I know that Kings TRICKTAKERs is sort of like closer to a trick-taking game, but still has some of the of what's going on here. There's a whole expanded family, so we can only talk about TRICKTAKERs. Mark did it better. Just dub over where you said it.
I will.
And that is TRICKTAKERs.
I got a chance to play Iquazú, a game designed by Mike.
Can you spell this?
Yes, Iquazu. And is designed again by Michael Feldkotter and published by Haba. I'm not too familiar with Feldkotter's work, although he has designed a number of games, with the highest ranking one on BGG being Via Appia. Have you guys played that?
I think I have played Via Appia.
Yeah, that's the push one, right?
Yeah, it's a Euro game with like the dexterity element. So yeah, I've not played it, but I think I've heard good things about it. Who knows? I also mentioned that this was published by Haba, which many board gamers will know that this is a big publisher in the space of children's games. Rest assured that Iquazú is definitely more along the lines of some of their other family fare, a la Karuba and Adventureland, two Haba games that I've played and really enjoyed.
Karuba, yes, a game for only the most adult among us.
No, but it's not a children's game. Relax.
Hard pass.
Neil and back me up on.
I love Karuba. I absolutely adore Karuba. So
boom,
Haba babies.
That more than makes up for Kellen's comment. Anyway, Iquazú, published in 2017, is primarily a game about area majority, and like all Haba games, it's very simple to teach and play while not being a children's game. On your turn, your choices are simple. You're either going to draw 4 cards or play some of those cards. The cards themselves are even quite straightforward, as they only consist of one of 3 colors. So the cards are either white, blue, or orange. There's no number, nothing else to consider except for the color. Before I talk about how you play your cards, what?
Just check the admin channel in Discord. I found a photo of people playing this game, and I just asked you which person you are in this photo.
Okay, I'm going to answer that. Oh, I mean, which person am I? I'm not the child.
There's multiple children, Mark.
They're not multiple children. They're a couple teenagers. I'm the older person in the back. Cool hair. Anyhow.
You're the cool adult playing it with the children.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to move on now. So let's talk about how you play these cards, these tricolored cards. So actually, before I even talk about the card play, let's talk about the board, which is lovely. Another hallmark of Haba games, very beautiful designs. So the board shows a number of columns, which sort of look like rock faces. Each column looks like a rock face, and each column is then further split into 5 sections. So it's a column, and each column is split into 5 sections. Each of the sections have some number of spots, which will be either blue, white, or orange, matching the colors of the cards. So when you play your cards on your turn, you're going to choose to play some number of cards of a single color and place one of your gems. Each person has gems in their player color that matches the colors of the cards you've played. So the way it works is like, if the spot you choose to play is on the leftmost column, so again, there's 5 exposed columns. If the spot you choose is on the leftmost column, it's going to cost you 1 card of that color to play in that column. So if there's a white spot on the leftmost column, you can play 1 white card and place one of your colored gems on that spot. If you want to place in the second column. It costs 2 cards of the same color, all the way to the rightmost columns, which is the 5th column, and therefore it'll cost you 5 cards of the same color to put one of your gems in one of those spots. Once the leftmost column is filled up with gems, there's an area majority scoring for that column. So whoever has the most gems in that column is going to score the most points. Second will get second place, and so on. There's also going to be a scoring for each of the 5 rows that are made up of each of those sections I talked about for each column. Scoring for the rows is just a simple majority. Whoever has the most gets a little token, which is going to grant you a one-time power or maybe some points that you can use on your turn later in the game. So the column scoring is always whoever has the most gets the most points, and second gets second, third gets something. But the scoring for the rows are going to be just a majority. Whoever has the most gets some sort of bonus. So the decision you have is whether you're going to spend fewer cards on your turn to, sort of nickel and dime yourself to put a bunch of gems for immediate points when that column is scored, or if you're going to invest more cards to place gems further down to sort of get an advantage for the row scoring for this one-time bonus scoring. The longer-term investments, if you're going to place it farther down in these columns, they're eventually going to score column points rather than just being part of the row scoring, because every time the leftmost column is scored, once you fill up a column, do the scoring, what you do is you then are going to remove this waterfall piece that has been covering up some of the columns. You're going to remove that. It's going to reveal a new column of scoring, and then you're going to slide the entire viewable area to the right once. And so that'll reveal another column for scoring, and you're going to move to the right. The game ends once you've removed the entire waterfall and you've slid this viewing screen all the way to the right, and you've scored the entire rock face, basically. And that's basically how the game goes. You just score column for column. As the game progresses, each column scoring becomes more and more valuable. So that's even more incentive to spend more cards to place your gems further down in anticipation of these higher scoring columns. Reviewing this and playing this sort of comes at an opportune time while we're talking about these hard pass games, because recently I found myself trying to figure out which games to get ready and learn and set up for game nights, and which ones I should pick out of the collection to teach. And I found myself, and we'll get into this more detail once we do the main topic, but I found myself sort of gravitating towards some of these simpler games where the rules teach is not going to bog everyone down. It's not going to take a long time. It's not going to get in the way of making decisions. And we're just going to be able to get right to the gameplay and right to the interesting decision making. And I think Iquazú, while it's not a, game that necessarily offers a ton of different things to it, it is an area majority game. Your choices are very simple. It is straightforward, and it's simple to teach, and it's fun, and the production is really nice. And it's a game that you could play with anyone who has played anything in the neighborhood of a Ticket to Ride thing. It's very Ticket to Ride-y in the way that you're accumulating cards and playing them. This is not a route builder. This is more of an area majority, but it's it feels in that same area. This is a game that I would be more than happy to play with people who are visiting who have never played a board game in their life. Very simple to teach. And yet that decision about, whether I'm going to spend an action to draw more cards in an effort to place gems further down to try to score the bigger columns later is an interesting one. It's a good one. And yeah, just a game that I think that sort of lightweight entryway sort of game is one that has risen to the top of my list when it comes to the people coming over who aren't necessarily board gamers but know that I'm into gaming and are interested in something. This is a perfect game for that sort of weight and that sort of situation. So I don't think it's going to crack my top 50, but a game that I'm very happy to have stumbled across and played. So that is Iquazú by Michael Feldkotter and published by Haba.
Does this waterfall it's pretty elaborate? And is this a gimmick, or could you do this without all of the theatrics here on the board?
I mean, come on, dude.
No, come on, dude. What do you mean?
It's fun. It's fun. It's cute.
It is cute.
Is this a board games don't need boards or whatever? All we need is cards and paper?
I'm just saying.
It is a gimmick, but it's a cute gimmick that more elaborate than just a nice looking board. There's a 3D quality to it, and you are actually pulling something off of the waterfall and you're sliding it over. So there's a physical component to it that makes it sort of dynamic. I'm trying to think this game without that, how much worse is it? I don't think it's much worse. I think it's still like a very simple, easy to teach, welcoming sort of game that I would be happy to play with family and not worried about teaching to family and friends. But the waterfall thing does make it more exciting, again, especially to folks who have not played a lot of modern board games. And when they hear the word board game, they just think flat board, cards, paper money sort of deal.
And do you tell them it's discount Avatar like before they play it or while they're playing it?
I leave it to them to figure that part out.
That is actually very striking how much Avatar is on the cover. There is something to this, I think, of just like the good, I was going to say good enough, but that's not even what I mean, but like the pretty good but small, simple game that I definitely think that I'm sort of starting to appreciate a lot more.
This is a game that if you guys were over, I would definitely make this a game that we played at some point because it's just like super easy to teach and attractive and fun. And we could, knock out a game in 20, 30 minutes, and I would know that it would be a solid experience. There's no worrying about like, oh my gosh, I forget this rule, and I got to make sure to teach them this rule, and maybe I have an advantage because I've played it before, and this game is complicated, and so there's like all these negatives to worry about teaching games and where the pitfalls could be. Like this is like a pitfall-less game. Like this is a game that I could teach anybody, play with anybody. I'm sure I would burn out on it if I played it 30 times, but those first 10, 15 times are going to be light and breezy and fun,
Cool. When were you going to tell us you had children?
All right, Neil, and tell us about Hubworld,
Hubworld, I've discovered Aidalon is the correct pronunciation.
Aidalon, okay.
How did you discover that?
I just found a video on the Kickstarter. I was like, oh, they just said the name. That's handy.
It's a real place.
Yeah. So Hubworld Aidalon, this is the upcoming Game Found Kickstarter coming out next week from Earthborn Games. So who up until now had, I believe, only done Earthborn Rangers, I forget. But this is a card game that I think, to not bury the lead, is their take on a Netrunner. Like, I should say real quick that these were review copies of identical preview decks that were sent to us, but they're also freely available on the website. So if anything I'm about to say sounds interesting, you can get them there and try them out. I think I'm going to try do this without necessarily relying on anyone knowing what Netrunner is. So let's sort of like start like broadly, which is that is a deck construction game, but one that is self-contained in the box. So it's not a collectible card game. You buy the box, you have all the cards you need in order to build decks. Each player is going to have a deck of cards that is going to have some combination of cards that generate money, shards, cards they're going to place on their board, which are offering protection in order to defend themselves from the other player securing their agents. That is the win condition. If you secure 3 of the other player's agents, which are just cards in their deck, then you win the game. The way that works is those cards, obviously just by nature of this sort of deck construction game, will either be in your deck, they will either be in your hand, they could be in your discard pile, and there are 3 sort of separate paths you can imagine as like a 3x3 grid. So 3 paths, 3 steps in each of these grids, and each of those paths is a way to like attack each of those locations. You're either attacking the player's deck or their hand or their discard pile. If you successfully attack one of those locations, you are pulling cards from their deck, their hand, or their discard pile. And if one of those cards is an agent and you're able to overcome its cost, you secure it. Okay. But along the way, you're setting up defenses. So you're going to take a card, you're going to play it face down as an action in your turn, for example, into one of your paths. Like say, oh, I'm protecting my hand. And I might do this because I know I have an agent in my hand that needs protecting, right? Or that could be a bluff. Then if that player then attacks that path, then they have to potentially encounter those defenses. If you have the money to activate them, they might have to pay more money to like overcome them. There's a lot of other stuff in there about whether you're there either have other costs that they need to play, like, exhausting other cards to overcome those defenses. Are they going to pay an additional cost to remove that card from your grid versus just bypassing it temporarily? And that kind of is the basic up and down flow of this. You're kind of putting cards out into your board, using them to generate money, and then utilizing that money to both defend and successfully run on the other player. If the Netrunner comparison has caught your eye, here are a couple of, I think, the very key differences, which is this is not asymmetric like Netrunner is. In Netrunner, one player is like a runner and the other person that's on the attack, and the other person is the corporation who has the agendas that they need to defend. In Eidolon, you kind of operate both roles. You're both defending your grid from the other player who is defending their grid, and you're running on each other like at any given time. It is also, like, I would say, pretty simplified across the board in terms of some of the rules craft. It's a little bit more accessible in that regard. But I still think it's like trades on some of the complexities that, in my opinion, don't really need to be there, which is like, Kellen, I remember this being a sore point for you in Netrunner, where it's like your hand is your grip, your deck is your this and that. In Eidolon, it's like your council, it's your commons, it's your archives, it's a separate discard pile, that's your exile. And like every card refers to those things by name. So there's this annoying barrier to like getting past just getting familiar with those terms. Obviously that would disappear with time, but it's a surprising choice for a game that's intended to be more accessible than Netrunner. I definitely admire that all the deck construction is like self-contained, so it's divorcing itself a little bit from some of the trappings of like living card games and collectible card games where you're just buying booster pack after booster pack, although to be honest, I don't know how that model is going to work in the long run. And the pedigree for this from the design team is really, really high. The two designers are Michael Boggs and Corey DeVore. And Michael Boggs, he has a background in Netrunner expansions, in Marvel Champions, the card game, in Arkham Horror. So like he really knows the style of game like through and through. And I think that comes across. I will say that one of the things that made this a little bit hard to evaluate is that the preview decks are designed to be broad strokes. Here are all the things that could be in your game with a mix of different types of agents and a mix of different types of defenses. They don't really feel like very cohesive decks to me. So I think the jury's a little bit out on how this will still play in reality once everyone has like a very specifically honed deck. But I kind of came away like very both optimistic, mostly because I really want a Netrunner replacement, and I really want one that exists in this form that doesn't require you to like engage with this like crazy business model, but also a little bit concerned. I do think that there are some things that get lost in translation. Like, I think Netrunner has like one of the best theme to gameplay crosses. The cyberpunk attack runner servers, all of that stuff is so good. It's so good in Netrunner, but it feels all a little bit generic in Eidolon. It kind of has this sort of cartoony fantasy sci-fi vibe that kind of doesn't really feel like anything super precise. That felt like more of a hit than I was expecting it to be. I like theme in games as much as the next person, if that next person is Kellen, but it's not something that's always going to take me out of the game necessarily, but I kind of felt like I was missing it here a little bit, you know? So that was a little bit of a bummer, but like, I am curious about this. I want this to be my Netrunner replacement. I'm like a little bit tentative about some of like the tempo considerations that are very different from Netrunner. There's a little bit of a, because you're not like asymmetric in the same way, there's a little bit of a, you know, you can always get back against the player that, you know, if the one player gets up 2 agents, there's always a way for you to turn it around, build your economy, and they'll like fight back, you know? But it does still have I don't know, it still just has a little bit of the Netrunner juice in it. Like I recognized it instantly. That just got me very excited. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. This is Hubworld Eidolon by Earthborn Games.
When you look at these sort of games, Neelan, are you always on the hunt for the next lifestyle game that you won't adopt but could adopt, or are you just like, I like skimming the surface and maybe I'll buy expansions? Like, and that's not a negative. I do the same thing. I'm just curious where your head's at in 2025.
No, exactly. No, I think it's a really good question. And you know, like, I think I go in phases with that a little bit. Like, I think with something like Altered, which was like the last big one of these I sort of jumped in on, I was excited for that to be a big one. And I didn't really think it got the widespread adoption that I was hoping for with like other people in my community playing it, for lack of a better word. But I think the difference with something like this is like the self-contained nature. Yeah. So for me, that is like a big appeal. Like Eternal Chronicles of the Throne, which is like Magic the Gathering, like in a box, that just has big appeal to me. Like if I can just teach someone a game and say like, hey, here's a deck I built for you. I think it's a pretty balanced deck. Let's play this game. That is great. That's kind of what I want from this, and that hasn't really existed for Netrunner. I do want to say that the caveat to all of this is that Project Nisei is very much a thing that exists. Like Netrunner is still very real for a lot of people, but it's just not something I could keep up with in the same way that I used to for this type of game. So yeah, I think this closed circuit economy for one of these games is very, very appealing for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't know why they had to add the colon when there's no other game called Hubworld. They could have had Hubworld, you know what I mean? Why did they think there was a lot of equity in this Aidalon planet?
It's part of their Aidalon franchise, which is...
Oh, is that what it is? There's an Aidalon?
No, I don't know.
Extended universe?
No idea. Yeah.
Well, don't speak if you don't know, Neelan.
That is Hubworld Aidalon by Earthborn Games.
Before we move on to the main topic, just a thank you for folks who responded to our call out last week for reviews. We got one here from Solid Steve. It says, easily the best board game podcast out there. I look forward to every episode. So thank you for that.
Solid
and again,
review.
if you want to help the show out, solid review from Solid Steve. He's known for just solid stuff. Reviews.
Solid opinions on everything, I would say. Like
Opinions,
a classy,
Yeah, opinions.
real upstanding
I'm sure his
person.
scrambled eggs are solid. Yeah.
You don't want solid scrambled eggs, Mark. You want them
but
like
you
right
want it to
on
be
the line.
good enough so people say these are solid.
Oh, I thought
These
you
are
were referring
solid.
to the
not
firmness.
not that they're
I
like
see.
dense. No,
Non-firm eggs.
just as a quality measure. Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
A line.
So be like Solid Steve.
I said a line. That's like corpo speak.
Yes, we are aligned. So if you want to be like Solid Steve, and we encourage all our listeners to be like Solid Steve, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find us. I guess Spotify is a good place to do it now, too. That would really help the show out. And again, always just sort of brightens up our day when we see a nice review out there. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, let's move on to our main topic. From that lightness and happiness and friendliness, we're moving on to hard passes. And this is, I don't think, necessarily to be overly negative. I'm sure there'll be a negative aspect to this, but more about being sort of discerning about the games that you are playing or the games you're buying or the games you're interested in. And so we wanted to start off by talking about maybe what games specifically, when we're considering what games to play or when we have a game, put before us as a potential game to play on a game night, are immediate hard passes, are games that we will decline to play. And this is sort of a tougher one for me because in general, if people are interested in playing a game, that makes me interested in playing that game as well. But there are certainly games where I will maybe try to suggest something different. So what are your guys' hard passes? What do you have? What thoughts do you have about hard passes?
Well, I can go first just to spike us with it. The thing is, for a game to be a hard pass, it has to be suggested by someone. So there's like all of these tier of games that just no one suggests anymore because they're bad. So this isn't to say that these are bad games, to be clear, but I would say that the one that I feel like in the last 2 or 3 years that I've hard passed the most is Sidereal Confluence. I think that it comes up at every convention as like, we should get a game of this going, and I just don't enjoy it. I don't find that it has enough like strategic depth to the length of time and headache that it gives me. Absolutely, Neelan is doesn't have a hard pass.
Sorry, I didn't want to like really like interrupt, but like I just don't agree.
Yeah, but carry on. No, yeah, this is my hard pass, Neelan. We have different. Yeah, we each have a different deck of hard pass. Yeah, we're different human beings, and I just find that like I'm always like, man, the type of person that is playing this game is the type of person I want to be playing games with because there's that social element to it, but it's just obnoxiously long and obnoxiously gives me a headache, and I just don't want to do it. And so, like, for me, Mark, we're talking about hard pass. I do think that, like, there is the, like, oh, maybe, but then you really try to, like, rouse people to something else. So I don't know that I'm shouting from the rooftops that I hate Sidereal Confluence. That isn't the nature of this hard pass. But I will say, in the last few years, it is the thing I feel like I have rejected the most often.
It's funny. A game that feels like that to me, like the same sort of vibe, where people who play it, I want to play with, and in general, it seems theoretically like a game that I'd like, but I just don't really want to play it very much anymore, is Captain Sonar. It's like shouty. I like shouty. It's like tense. I like tense. It's like an event game. I like event games, but there's something about it that's just like a little overwhelming. I always sort of feel like I get a headache from it, and just it's like ingredients all great, but the resulting meal, it just never satisfies me, and it just feels like what you're talking about with Sidereal.
The one thing that I think it's not exactly similar to Sidereal, but in the one way it is kind of these like large scale, like lots of player party games with not really, I guess, like semi-party games. Okay, there's a specific thing that comes to mind, which is like Citadels, I think is like kind of one of the go-to examples for me. Games that are like sort of like semi-strategic party games I always feel like there are too many players, they go on like for twice as long as you want them to. For me,
Coup?
It will always just
Coup?
I think social deduction is the one part where I'm willing to give it a pass, but I think Coup fits into that realm as well. I would rather play like a proper social deduction game in that realm for certainly. But like there are a bunch of these games that are kind of like either like team games or like, stuff like a Shadowhunters or stuff a Citadels, where it's just like, my feeling is always, this is heightened mostly from the fact that we can play it as an 8-player game, but the juice here isn't good enough to sustain it for like an hour,
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way every time I play Citadels, which granted has been a while, but the reason is because it just takes so long for
is
what
there
it
ever
offers.
Seven Wonders actually is a good example of another one of these as well for me.
Is there ever, I don't get why people hate Seven Wonders. I don't like particularly love Seven Wonders, but like the sort of like, oh my god, this is bad thing is like, what? Like drafting?
I think it's kind of for that reason, honestly. Like, it's just too long for what it is.
Well, and I think that's also the other component of a hard pass at a game night specifically, where it's like, if 4 people said they wanted to play Seven Wonders, it's like a much different proposition than they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm playing, so I'll join. And then you're at 7 players, Seven Wonders, and you're like, okay, now I'm hard passing out of this game. And I'm out.
Speaking of time commitments, this is sort of a cheat because I don't really have a specific game. I wanted to try to keep it to specific games if possible, but this is sort of more like a genre. Legacy games. God, I have completely flipped on legacy games. When they first were the hotness and coming out, I was so excited about all these potential things. Were like, I was going to have an adventure. And 2 years down the line, we'd played 100 games of it, and I was going to be this super powerful guy and all this stuff and all these like potential possibilities were just so alluring. Even when the legacy thing started to peter out a little bit, I was still like, no, this is still could be cool. This still could have possibilities that you can't get from other games. But now if I see a game as a legacy game, like if I'm looking at a Kickstarter game or a game that's coming out that's like this behemoth that is a legacy game, like even the smallest legacy component is an instant pass for me. Just too much commitment necessary. I don't know if it's a victim of me wanting to play a lot of different games, but just the prospect of playing the same game 50 times. There are some games that I've learned to love and play a ton of times now in the last couple of years, like Azul and Splendor and Race for the Galaxy. These are games that I've played, in Race for the Galaxy's case, hundreds of times and loved it. But just the prospect of legacy games, and so like, Gloomhaven and Frost, I will never Haven. I will never Haven in my future, I can say. It's just an instant hard pass for me. As much as it pains Mark from 10 years ago, legacy is just instant no for me.
It's like I always say that I'll do them, and then I hard pass by just never agreeing to come back. And then the group, Neelan's been on the receiving end of my feeling on legacy games.
Exactly.
I think that when we move beyond specific games, there are publishers that I just assume I will not like Gamelin games, like the Tiny Epic games. Like I just, on principle, would not play them. I think there's been one Scott Alms game that I have liked one time, and I've played like more than 10. And again, I'm not trying to hate on the person, and they're very successful board game designer who's designed dozens and dozens of games. But like, if I notice that that's the designer on the game or that it's a Gamelin game, I'm just like, yeah, this isn't going to be for me. It's going to be for this specific type of player. And I'm just going to, like, I would leave a game night if there were 5 people and that was the only option. I would just be like, yeah, okay, enjoy it. I wouldn't, again, I'm not sure I believe in the yuck yum thing, which we could talk about. Like, I find that to be like quite destructive to like communicating with folks, but I wouldn't be like hard pass and then just walk out of the room like, oh, I don't know that I'm into this one, hope you guys like it kind of thing, and then peace out. Because I have been stuck earlier on in board gaming just playing like game after game of stuff I just don't want to be in. Yeah.
I think if we are talking specific designers, and this is kind of a bummer for me because like I really like Vinyos and Kanban, but I think any recent Lacerda, I don't know that I have any interest in playing after the last few I've played. I think like On Mars and Weather Machine like put me off so much to the extent that I'm just like, I don't like the direction that he's now peddling as a designer, which is to be overly complicated, to be overly heavy, to be overly long. Like, it just seems like he has a growing audience that's exactly what they want from a Lacerda game, and that's the realm he's now in. And like, I think Kanban is a fairly heavy game, I would say, but it was still on this comfortable side of like the payoff is worth it and everything is kind of tying together in a way that like kind of makes sense to me. But yeah, I just kind of feel like a lot of the recent output of Lacerda has kind of veered in a direction where I just have no more interest in engaging with it. And I think On Mars was the very specific trigger for me. And then like Weather Machine just cemented that.
It's funny. I have not played any of his more recent fare. I'm curious, as as my taste sort of like seem to be going towards more straightforward. I wonder if I'll be in the same boat as you.
Yeah, and I think it's not always like, so for instance, like you have a game like Twilight Imperium, right, which is just like a huge darling, but like my experience with the game is approximately, it's just like I would rather play 4 other heavy area control negotiation adjacent games in the time frame of that, and I would like really steer the conversation hard to get there. And then I think every other year I get talked into playing Twilight Imperium, and then I go, oh yeah, I remember why this is like very wide of a game, but it's not very deep. And I often feel like I'm like, I know what's going to happen halfway through, but you're still there for like hours and hours.
Right.
And so I think it's really clear that one in particular is like many people's favorite game of all time. So we're not even, this is just like what our experience has led us to for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would probably be exactly the same place in Twilight Imperium specifically, to be honest. Like, it's very hard for me to imagine a world where I would say yes to playing that game at this point again. And like on a related note, and this one is a little bit unfair because like I love, or I would say used to love this game, but I think like Battlestar Galactica is now also in a realm where it's just like when I think about how long it takes to play, I don't know what it would take for me to be like excited to play that again, when I think that there are other games that are like comparable. I know that's like a hard thing to say when nothing like really matches the theme of Battlestar Galactica, but like I would just be like, well, what if we did this instead? That's like gets us like halfway there in like half of the time.
Yeah. I think like, if you go even beyond that to just like time, anytime someone describes a game as a Euro game and they say that it will take 2.5 hours, what they actually mean is 3.5 to 4. And so I like will really start grilling the owner of the game on like, how much can I screw with my neighbors during this game? Or are we really playing solitaire here? And I will usually nope out on the stuff at a game night specifically. And that's not the same though, because like we play heavy Euro games. It's just like more in okay, we're going to get together and play this one, specifically because we're all intrigued by this about it. Like we did Kutna Aura recently, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And I have another one that I want to get to the table soon, Neelan.
Yeah, I would say if I'm reading instructions for a game or if I'm learning about a game and I see like midweight Euro, that is a warning. It's not necessarily a hard pass immediately, but I do want it to have some sort of interactivity or something interesting about it. Like there has to be something to elevate it a little bit, or I'm probably going to move on to the next possibility. Speaking of popular games, that this is probably pretty close to, there's obviously, as Count said, like just bad games I would just not want to play, or bad games in my experience, like games I don't like that I want to play. But a game that is super popular and is part of like a genre, I think the leader of a genre of games I tend to not want to play, is Welcome To. And this is sort of like the roll and write, flip and write genre games that I just find myself gravitating away from. But I think a symbol of these games is Welcome To. Welcome To is super popular. It's got like a bunch of different versions and expansions or whatever. And there's something about just spending your time scribbling on your own notepad and then tallying the points at the end. There is some like racing for goals and stuff like that, lends the air of interactivity. But I don't know what it is about just giving everybody's piece of paper and their own pen to like write down what they're doing. Just sort of like turns me off on playing. I guess I just want that shared board or like the passing cards around or something. There's something that is lost for me when it comes to roll and writes and flip and writes that
are we kind of past
me off
the point of those really coming up or being suggested? I'm now like thinking of the last time that it was a big.
Yeah, I was just thinking like I feel like we've definitely cooled down on that quite a lot. But yeah, a lot of them are. I think they're still coming out like semi regularly, but we've definitely passed that big boom for sure.
Super Mega Lucky Box was the last one that I like remember popping, and even that's not exactly the same, but. Yeah, it's interesting. No, because there's definitely an era where it was like every other game was that. Every other like light.
Yeah.
And, now we're in everyone make a clone of like Wingspan and Earth over and over again. It'll be good this time, we swear.
One of the ones that's like hyper-specific to me are like partnership trick-taking or shedding games. I think I mentioned how much they stress me out.
Boo.
I cannot handle the potential to be a huge letdown to my partner in games like that. It's something that scares me a lot about the Wrath of Kellen every time I fail him in Yokai.
Just because that's what you do every day in your normal life doesn't mean that you're going to let me down, Nealon, in our games. Yeah, I always feel bad when I talk you into that, when I know inside you're screaming, hard pass, hard pass.
One more type of game I'll talk about so I've sort of softened on co-ops. Like I was more hardline against playing co-ops, I think a while ago, a couple years ago. There are now a number that I find interesting and wouldn't mind playing, but the ones that I still stay away from are the ones that don't really address the potential for quarterbacking. And again, I know that it comes down to like just playing with people who aren't jerks, and that's fine. But even then, even when I'm playing with people that are playing in the right spirit and are listening to people and are taking things on, they always just feel like they're like glorified solo games. Again, there are games like Sky Team, for example, is a co-op that came out recently that I really really like. That I guess you could not even play that one, and this is probably part of my argument. Like Sky Team, you cannot play solo because of like the hidden information aspect to it that's so vital to it. But games that have a solo variant, or basically are solo games that split the workload up among the players, are games that I just feel like, especially now that I'm more interested in solo games, like I just classify those as like solo games. What I'm thinking about here is like Robinson Crusoe as an example. There's obviously like games like Pandemic and stuff like that, although Pandemic is so straightforward and pared down that I still wouldn't maybe hard pass it. But any game that is like solo with the everybody's like taking a part of the action are just games that I'm not really interested in, unless it's solo.
Yeah, it's interesting because you say that, and I remember one of my heuristics or a hard pass was like, if the game could be played solo, I didn't want to play it because it usually meant like certain specific things. I think that is now not the case, right? Because so many of these games have like a different designer coming in and designing like a side solo game.
Right.
So I like to help.
Oh, you're saying that if a game had a solo option, you would just classify it
as like if you can play this solo, it will not work for me because it just lacks the interactivity. And I think that heuristic was true like 10 years ago and is now not the case.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the modern solo design is more about like automating other players and,
Yeah, no, I don't even... I always get like when it's a Kickstarter and like the reward... the special bonuses, and if enough people back this, we'll do a solo mode. And I'm like, well, I hope we get right underneath it. You know what I mean? So I sometimes just throw away the solo mode stuff out of my boxes. It's not like
you're so chaotic when it comes to your your games, how you handle your games, just throwing stuff out.
Yeah, well, you gotta.
Not for you.
It's
just
like
chuck
when I open it, I just want to like make it work. You know what I mean? Like I was at, no. I'm being serious. Like this isn't just pure.
I know. I'm with you.
It's like I took Resistance to a work retreat, right? And like in my copy of Resistance was Hidden Agenda and Hostile Intent and all the other like. So before I left, because I knew it was going to be at a bar, I took out everything except for Merlin and the assassin, which is the commander and the whatever they came up with to keep that in the sci-fi theme. And so when I opened the box, it was just like really easy, ready to go for the people I had. And like that actually helped a lot because in this dark, loud environment where I'm like, oh, that's the false commander. Oh, like, give me back those cards. Like, that's going to be a problem. So just throw them away. I'm never going to use the solo game card. or donate them, you know what I mean? To be more politically correct. Or recycle them.
Okay, I think that's going to do it for our discussion on hard passes. If you've got a couple hard passes of your own, let us know what makes the cut or fails the cut, I guess, by going to our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and go to the podcast channel and let us know what games or what types of games you are not interested in playing. I'd be curious to see what lines are drawn over there. And just check out our Discord in general. We had user Evil Lemons, who is the person who always introduces us to the most obscure, interesting, weird games at our Dice Tower meetups. We did a Discord play of Mr. Diamond, the game we talked about a little while ago, which was a blast. You can check that out. I think on our Dice Tower West channel. It was a really fun experience today. But yes, and if you want to talk to us about anything else, you can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Big thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Three, two, one.
I feel like everyone's judging me now every time I clap.
Tight clap.
Oh, it's funny because when I'm doing you're trying to keep the 3, 2, 1 cadence, and so I say 3 naturally. I just say 3, and then as I'm saying 2, I'm like, hey, remember how far it was from 3 to 2, and then I'm like so in my head going from 2 to 1.
That's wild,
and it's funny. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to episode 332 of the Board Game Barrage podcast.